Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another Master Duel video here. So today I got a bit of a different deck to show you, slightly, a variation of the Blue Eyes White Dragon deck. And this one is going to be for Invoked. So I've been testing this deck out a little bit on Master Duel. I've been kind of ranking with it and climbing it with it. And yeah, I made some changes and compared to my real life IRL deck, this one's gonna be a little bit different. Obviously, you have different ban lists and everything, but yeah, I tested out a bit of some new cards with the deck, and I think it works relatively well. So I just want to talk about it. All right, so the idea of this deck is essentially to try to get out Makaba by your before your fifth summon, so you don't get any Beerud. Obviously, if you get Max Seed or Fruitfulose or whatever, you can't really do anything about that. Presuming you have maybe Ash Blossom or Call by the Graves to try to stop that from happening. But we're gonna play a bit more of a slow control deck. It's not really a combo deck per se. It's definitely more control. You're really trying to sit on maybe one or two boss monsters. Well, I wouldn't even say boss monster, but like monsters that are kind of hard to deal with, namely Makaba and Spirit. So we kind of sit on them to kind of control the pace of the game and slowly grind out our opponent. We're not really trying to do big crazy combos, kind of like the with the Buster Blader version. So this deck definitely a lot more slower, a lot more, I would say, resilient to certain hand traps per se, and a little bit more or less bricky because you're not playing as many bricks as you are playing with the Buster Blader version. So I just want to go ahead and talk about the deck a little bit here. So it's a pretty, if you look at the deck overall, right, there's a couple things going on. So there's essentially three different engines we have in the deck. So we have the main engine here. We have the Blue Eyes White Dragon deck, or Blue Eyes White Dragon engine. So you got two Blue Eyes, triple Veiler, triple Sages, and triple Maiden. That's my ratio that I like for the Blue Eyes stuff, or at least when it comes to their monsters. And obviously I just have one Jet Dragon for the bit of the grind game. But yeah, and then you have basically the rest of the hand traps here, Maxie's, Ash Blossom, not much to say. As for the Invoke engine, you really only have about 7 cards or so. You have 3 Alistairs, you have 1 Invocation, and 2 Meltdown. That's all you really need. You really only need 1 Invocation, mainly because it's super searchable, and that you're really not really fusing that much at all. You're really maybe making 1 Macabre, maybe 2 at most. Definitely 1 Macabre per turn. You're not really trying to crank out double Macabre compared to like a regular Invoke style play, mainly because 1, you won't have the resources to do that, and 2, we have other forms of disruption with spirits and a couple other monsters that we have down here, so we don't really need to be cranking out too many Macabres. So just 1 invocation. If you do draw it plus an Alistair, it's not the end of the world, but it does kind of suck. But hey, that's just the nature of the game. So just a total of 6 card engine there. As for the next engine we have is we also have the Bistro engine. So we have 1 Manamut, or however you pronounce that name. I can never pronounce that correctly. Then we have 2 Druid Swarm. We have 1 Lubellion, and then 1 Branded Regain. So why are we playing the Druid package or the Bistro package in this particular version of the deck? So what I've kind of discovered, right? So if you try to, let's say you're using Alistair and you're using Invocation to try to fuse. Let's say they use D Barrier, or they get rid of your Alistair in your graveyard, they DD Crow it, or they Bistro it, right? Now basically your invocation is dead, or they shuffle Alistair back to the deck. Now you have invocation in the graveyard and then no banish Alistair, so you can't add invocation back to the deck. So what you can do is you can always banish your own Alistair with the Druid Swarm, with the Bystials here. You can banish Alistair from the graveyard and then be able to add back the invocation. So it gives you a bit of more resilient in the event that they somehow disrupt your fusion play. So hence why we're playing the Bistros, and they're pretty decent hand traps in the current meta. You have a lot of Fiendsmith running around, so the Bistros themselves are pretty good. They're also dragons, and they kind of just work off each other, so it's not too bad. We only play one Rebellion because we don't really need to open up with the Druid Swarm. Like I mentioned, this is like the tertiary engine. It's not really our main engine. Our main engine is Blue Eyes. Our secondary engine is Alistair. Obviously, you still want to summon Alistair first compared to anything else in the deck here, but the Bestials is just there to sort of back up your the rest of your engines, and they also act as kind of annoying removal too. Like if you link away the Druid Swarm here, you can start popping cards off of your opponent's board. So they're kind of like a just a support engine of a support engine. So we're not really needing too many Bestial cards. You could play some of the other Bestials if you like. I don't think they're all really that worth playing. I don't think Songaneer or Baldric is all really worth playing in the deck as much. So I didn't bother with them. I think Songaneer is better if you were playing Branded Beast. That way you can kind of combo it off, setting regain and setting beast up. But we're not really doing that. That's just more bricks that we're going to be adding to the deck, and we're already kind of bricky as a deck, so not really needing to see those. Now with the Rebellion, the reason why we only play one copy is, like I said, we don't need to see the Bestials in our opening hand, but it is technically searchable. So if you do any 2 dragons, you can always search Rebellion. So any 2 dragons will go into Seal, which will then go into Manamut, which can then search your Rebellion. So that's the hence why we don't really need like 2, maybe even 3 copies. And plus you only got 3 copies to search, or 3 Bestials to search off of the 1 Rebellion. So I don't think it's all that necessary. But once you do search for, let's say, Druid Swarm, you banish something in your graveyard, you can sack the Druid Swarm, summon Rebellion, and then use Rebellion's effect to basically place Regain onto the board. So that's the idea right there. And Regain is decent because obviously of the synergy with the Bestials, but also synergy with Alistair. Since we're using Invocation to fuse a lot, we could actually recycle some of our fusion materials, right? We could recycle if we had to fuse away Blue Eyes, for example, or any of our light type dragon monsters in here. If let's say we had, I don't know, Spirit in the graveyard, and we wanted to make a Macabre, you can fuse away Alistair plus the Spirit Dragon, and if you had Branded Regain on the board, you could shuffle basically Spirit Dragon back into the extra deck and draw a card. So it gives us a bit of a I guess a grind game, right? So Regain helps us with a little bit of the grind game. Essentially, as long as you have stuff in the graveyard to fuse and you have Regain on the board, you'll always have infinite amount of Macabres. So you can do Alistair, banish Macabre, go into another Macabre, shuffle one of the Macabres back with Regain, and then therefore you just have infinite Macabres. So that's kind of the idea with the Regain. So if we have Regain on the board, we have our Alistair engine going, and we're just trying to grind out our opponent. That's the idea there. So it all kind of works well together. Obviously, if you draw this Regain and you don't draw Druid Swarm, it's not the end of the world, because I think this card will always net us at least one, be able to recycle something. Plus, if our opponent summons something, we can always summon out a Druid Swarm, or we can summon out a Bistro if we have the or Manamut in the grave, just to get more synergy with the deck and searching out more dragons, I suppose. So yeah, it's kind of like like I said, it's 3 different engines. They all work relatively well together. Not much to really say more about that, but I do think it's kind of neat. Then for the rest of the spells cards, we have Wishes of Blue and Roar of the Dragon, or Roar of the Blue Eyes White Dragons here. I'm playing 2 copies, so I eventually took out the bingo machine because after a while I just wasn't really using it that much, because after the first couple of turns, if you don't see bingo machine, kind of dead. Playing the second Roar to essentially make Wishes more live, just because we need more targets for Wishes to search out with, because generally with our first Wishes, we'll search out Roar, and then we'll most likely set Majesty to the field using True Light. And so if you draw more Wishes, if you don't have no other Blue Eyes spell cards in the deck, then those Wishes become kind of dead. So I'm trying out 2 Wishes here, instead of playing the bingo machine. So just to get a little bit more recursion too. It's kind of nice to be able to bring back any blue eyes that was banished, or even Jet Dragon is banished. Jet Dragon is a very hot card for our opponent to Bistro, and it's kind of neat to be able to just special summon it again off of the Roar, assuming that we have a blue eyes on the board. But yeah, it's kind of a nice recursion card. And the neat thing about this card too is you can actually use this to fuse into Macabre. So as long as you're using a blue eyes monster, so either Jet Dragon or even any of these ones, you can even use Spirit. If you have that on the board, or you had this in your hand and you had an Ouster on the board or the hand, you can actually banish Roar from your graveyard to fuse into Macabre. Because it's just interesting. As long as you use a blue eyes monster and obviously an Ouster, you can actually Roar into them. Keep in mind though, if you do use Roar that turn, it does lock you into Dragon, so you would have to wait one turn before you can fuse, if that was the case, right? So just something to keep in mind. While it's neat that you can fuse, you just have to wait a turn usually. That, and I think you only use one effect of Roar per turn. So even if you were trying to fuse into Tyrant Dragon, if you try to bring back, I don't know, blue eyes from the graveyard, and you try to fuse the same turn, you can't, because Roar is a hard once per turn for each effect. So you only use one of those effects. But yeah, Roar is kind of interesting in that sense. Next off, we just got the field spells here, and I'll kind of explain this and the extra deck in a second here. Then last off, just Call by the Graves. I think Call by the Graves is pretty good, just because there's just so many hand traps in the format right now, and we're really trying to, if we're going first, we're really just trying to push through as many hand traps as we can. And even going second, your opponent's gonna have Ash Blossom, they're gonna have Max C and Fufulos, so it's nice to be able to just turn off those hand traps, especially in the best of one format, and try to continue your plays and make a board and push through your opponent. And the neat thing about this particular deck is it's a little bit better going second than the Buster Blader version of the deck is, because Buster Blader requires a full turn to set up, where this version of the deck, where Ouster doesn't really require, you can go second and still make plays, where Buster Blader is a little bit harder to play under your opponent's board, where this deck is a lot easier. Okay, next off, we're gonna move into the extra deck, right? So the most interesting part about this is the extra deck. So let me kind of explain a couple of things. And I'm still experimenting with the extra deck to see what kind of where to make it better, but this is what I got so far. So we're playing one Kalyaga, whatever his name is. Essentially, this guy is just to be able to recycle certain things in our deck. So if we needed to fuse our dark stuff away, like I said, you get Branded Regain. This allows us to use Alistair plus one of our Bestials just to recycle it and draw a card, and then put a body onto the board. And then normally I don't leave him on the board. I normally would just get rid of him and go into SP or something like that. So you can get rid of him, go into SP, banish something, assuming you have obviously another monster on the board. So essentially that's all I really use him for. And I guess in the worst case scenario, if you really want, you need just to stall your opponent for a turn or something like that, or just stun lock him for a turn, you can just summon him and just sit on him with an Ouster in hand or something like that, and they can't, unlikely they're going to be able to beat over a 2800 defense monster and be able to also out it without using any monster effects, because they have essentially just one monster effect to use that turn. So just kind of a neat card there. Then obviously we have the Tyrant Dragon, and then we have the two Macabres. Now you don't have to play two Macabres, you could play just one Macabre or the other Invoked card. Since you are playing Regain, you may not need two Macabres. You can play this card, the Agodias, I think. I don't know how you pronounce that. So you can potentially just do something like this if you wanted to, just to diversify your extra deck a little bit. But I just went ahead and just went with the two Macabres here as my sort of main thing. Plus, you don't know if you're playing against, I don't know, Casteria. If they banish your Macabre from your extra deck, that kind of sucks, your single copy. So I like just to play the two copies there for that reason. Okay, next off is the weird part. So it's going to be the synchro portion of the deck, right? So as you notice, we're not really playing the Crimson Dragon package anymore, at least in this particular version of the deck, mainly because we can't effectively go into Double Spirit. This version of the deck has lot harder time going to double spirit than the Buster Blader version of the deck. Because Buster Blader, the reason why it goes well to double spirit a lot is because you have Buster Whelp, and being able to summon two um, tuners, level one tuner a turn, uh, more consistently allows you to go into Spirit Dragon, where we can't really do that with this version of the deck. Like, yes, we can go Sage and maybe search out if we had a another copy of Maiden in the hand. We can go Sage, search out a second copy of Maiden, and then normal summon the Maiden using the Mausoleum. Then yes, we can potentially go into double spirits, but it's very rare. So what we're using for the extra deck is just kind of utility, right? So a lot of these monsters are just meant to, we sit it on Spirit and Macabre. Macabre's gonna negate something. Spirit may negate something in the graveyard, or you sack the Spirit, summon out Moonrose just to act as a sort of disruption. Same thing with Ultimate Spirit. We can summon out Ultimate Spirit to sort of act as a single turn negate, but it will die. However, the cool thing about this deck is if you're going first and you got Magical Meltdown down, and they somehow, I don't know, I guess if they negate your Spirit or something like that, you could potentially go into Ancient Fairy, pop either the Mausoleum or pop Magical Meltdown and search it. Search the other field spell, or if your opponent's playing field spells, you can also pop their field spell, which is kind of nice. You search that, add it to your hand, you do whatever, and then if you're still in your main phase 1, you can use Ancient Fairy's Dragon's effect to special summon one of your level 1 tuners, and then you can synchro into a Clear Wind Synchro Dragon. Granted, you'll lose your battle phase, but you can kind of go into this guy for free, essentially. So it's kind of cool that way. And his effect basically is just an Ami Monster Negate, and it doesn't cost you anything. And he's relatively hard to get rid of in the sense that he's almost impossible to beat over because he just keeps gaining attack points. So that's why we do that. And the reason why we're also playing the 2 level 7s is because we're playing Bystrials. So Bystrials plus any of your level 1 tuners will become either Moonrose Dragon or becomes Ancient Fairy. So that's kind of like another thing to keep in mind, is that you can actually just manually make these if you wanted to, using a Bystrial, Druid Swarm, or Magna Hut here, and just any of your level 1 tuners, and you can actually just go into them and make the copies that you need to. Moonlight is just annoying to deal with, especially if your opponent's playing like any sort of fusion decks, or they're playing synchro decks. If they try to summon something, Moonrose can trigger and just bounce that target back to the deck for free, essentially. So really nice card if you do hard make it. So kind of neat there. And then yeah, just 2 Spirit Dragons. Not really much to say about that. Definitely 2 Spirits of Blue. So if you didn't know, you can actually summon Alistair, search your spell, and then send Alistair to the graveyard to summon Spirit, because that's essentially the synergy right there. And then go into Spirit and search for your Mausoleum. And then we have Heretic, and then we have 1 SP. And that's really it. The deck's pretty basic, pretty simple in that sense. I think it just works overall really well, and you don't really brick as hard as the Buster Blader version. I wouldn't say this deck is budget, because I think this deck requires about 32 ultra rares, so that's quite a lot. I think that's like over 960 points right there, where I think the Buster Blader version is like 33 ultra rares. So neither decks are budget. So if you don't have the ultra rare points, then I wouldn't make this particular deck. The only cards I could say you maybe cut out is effect failures. You didn't really have that, and maybe less copies of this, but everything else in the deck is kind of staple, so it's kind of hard to not play. You can mix match different hand traps. Like, you can, if you're on a budget, you can use Droll instead, or you have copies of Ghost Ogre or Ghost Bell, you can use those. If you have copies of Fufurlos, you can use that. Maybe I wouldn't use Pirelli. Pirelli's kind of more of a side deck card. You could use more copies of Druid Swarms or the other Bystrials. But yeah, outside of that, if you don't have the ultra rare points, this deck is going to be a little hard to craft. That is just, nature of Blue Eyes White Dragon decks. They require a bunch of ultra rare points, especially for the extra deck and the monsters themselves. You can get free copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Well, quote unquote free copies. You can get a couple of copies of these using the structure deck. The structure deck will give you Blue Eyes White Dragon for free, essentially. So you can use that. None of the new Blue Eyes cards are free. So like you need Wishes, you do need Maiden, and those are like the main like two cards that are like ultra. Good thing is that you only really need one ultimate, so you're not really making like 2 or 3 copies of these. But you will need Spirit, and Spirit is definitely generally a 2 of. So that's something you can't really cut out. The Invoke engine and the Bistro engine, pretty cheap. Like the Invoke engine is all supers, I think. So it's like double Ousters, or sorry, triple Ouster, Invocation, and Macabres. They're all super rare. So the Invoke is the most budget friendly version or budget engine of the deck. The Bestials, you do need the Magnum Hut here, and you do need maybe 1 copy of Lebellion. You may be able to skip out on Lebellion if you wanted to. If you do skip out on Lebellion, then I would probably not play Regain either. And it's up to you. I mean, at this point, you would have to hard draw the Regain to make any use of it, and I don't think that's really worth it at that point. So I do believe you need at least 1 Lebellion. If you do play more Abyssrials, you may have to have a second copy of it. So it's entirely up to you how you want to customize the deck. And what you find most important. But I think this is kind of like a regular kind of cookie cutter version of the deck right here, and you can kind of just mix and match certain cards. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for you guys here. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'll try to answer them to the best of my knowledge there. But yeah, it's a fun deck, and I was able to climb from, I think, gold 3 to platinum something right now. Let me kind of check what my rating is right now. I think it's like platinum. Yeah. So I guess I'm platinum 4 right now. I don't. Let me show you my matches, I guess. So I've been kind of testing the deck out a bit on here, and let me kind of show you. Yeah, so yeah, I win most of my games. I do lose a couple here, but yeah, for the most part, like this deck, both versions of the deck, Buster Blader and Invokes, like you can kind of see, I've basically winning a couple of turns. This one was a grind game. I messed up on this one here, but yeah, for the most part, I think the deck has worked, especially if you're looking just to climb out of gold into platinum and above. You can definitely get into diamond and even master if you just put a little bit of work in. I probably won't try to climb to master because I don't have time for that as much anymore. But yeah, I think overall the deck is pretty good. And yeah, if you guys got any comments, just let me know down below. All right, peace.